In the previous videos, we have seen that there are two approaches to set the discount rate, from the production side, from the consumption side. So production side is called cost of capital or producer rates of discount approach. Consumption side is called time preference or consumer rates of discounts approach. Within these two categories, there are two approaches within these two categories. So for the approach 1, cost of capital or producer rates of discount, there are actually two of these. One is called social opportunity cost of capital. This represents the return on investment that could have been earned by society if the capital used in this project, if the resources used in this project was instead invested in the best alternative comparable project. So we are going to use a rate of return from investing in best alternative comparable projects as a discount rate for this project we are assessing. Second is called project-specific cost of capital discount rate. And this method is based on the capital asset pricing model, CAPM, and use beta as measures of risks. So here beta, the market itself has a beta 1. So that's kind of benchmark. The market is efficient. It has diversified away all idiosyncratic risks. The risk that cannot be diversified is called systematic risks. So market risk is measured through the so-called beta factors. So the market itself as a beta of 1. If the project or if the firm is of low risk, the firm's beta could be less than 1. If the firm is risky, say the firm is a resource mining firm, then it might have a beta higher than 1. So typically, resource companies will have higher betas, while food retailing firms will have low ones. So when we are assessing a project, we can choose an appropriate beta on the basis of risk associated with the project. So if this project is a mining project that we are assessing, then we can use a beta higher than 1. If this project is of low risk, then we can use a beta lower than 1. So under the CAPM, the required rate of return on the project or the discount rate is obtained by multiplying the beta by the average market risk premiums and then add it to a generic risk-free rate, which is typically proxied by the Treasury long-term bond rate. So there's a risk-free rate plus this terms that captures risk premiums. Okay, this term is composed of two components. One is risk premium. So this is market rate of return, the difference between market rate of return and the risk-free rate. So that's risk premium. This is augmented by the beta associated with the project. If it is higher than 1, it's riskier than the market, then we use a beta higher than 1. If it's lower, if it is less risky, then we use a beta lower than 1. For example, suppose the project is risky and the beta for this project is chosen to be 1.25, riskier than the market, and the risk-free rate of return is 8%. An average market interest rate, average rate of return on the market is 12%. Then we can easily find the discount rate for this project, which is the risk-free rate, 8%, plus the beta, 1.25 times the market premium, 0.12 minus 0.08, which is roughly 0.13 or 13%. So both the social opportunity cost and the project-specific cost of capital reflect a rate of return available on alternative projects. However, the project-specific cost of capital tends to be related mostly to privately financed projects. And as such, it also reflects the rate of return that lenders require for this project. In the perfect capital market with no taxation, no distortion, the rate of return achieved on capital and the rate of return that lenders required for giving up present consumption and for taking on risks, they will be equal. Okay. However, because of taxation, the social opportunity cost is generally lower than the marginal returns that lenders require. Right, let's approach one, the approach from the production side. Approach 2, time preference or consumer rates of discount. There are also two of them here. First is called social time preference rate. This represents society's preference for consumption now versus consumption in the future. Second is private time preference rate, and this represents the individual's preference for consumption now versus consumption in the future. So one is the society, the other is individuals. And if there's no discrepancy, then generally they will be the same. The STPR, social time preference rate, is similar to private time preference rate, but takes a social view on the additional future consumption required to exactly compensate for postponement of a unit of present consumption. So it has a social standard views. Okay. Conceptually, the STPR might vary from the individual preference for present rather than future consumption. For example, if individuals systematically take decisions which fail to take account of the needs of the future generations, the STPR will be lower than the private time preference. Okay. So they could be different. They could be different if individuals does not care too much about the future generations. So in practice, there's a hierarchy of possible discount rates, ranging from this project-specific cost of capital, generally highest one, then the social opportunity cost, then the private time preference rate, then the social time preference rate, which is usually the lowest. The ranking is like this. In principle, we have perfect competition, no distortions, no taxations, cost of capital based discount rate, and the time preference based discount rate, they should be the same as we see it in the graphs previously. In reality, cost of capital is higher than the time preference rate. Thus, in reality, we need to choose one to use. So here's the rules. So use the time preference approach if you are certain that the project itself is changing the society's saving rate. For example, if the project we are assessing is superannuation, then it will change the society's saving rate. We want to use time preference approach. That is causing a change in the mix of consumption now versus consumption in the future. We want to use cost of capital approach if the project is taking resources from other parts of the economy, which is generally the case for quite many projects that we will assess. They are taking resources from other parts of the economy. Department of Finance recommends that the cost of capital approach be used in general. So the Department of Finance also recommends that the discount rate used for government projects should be the same as those used when evaluating private projects. Because if not, first, the government discount rate, suppose the government discount rate is lower than the private rate, resources will be inefficiently moved to the public sector. Or if the government discount rate is higher than the private sector discount rate, then resources will be inefficiently moved from the public sector to the private sectors. So essentially the point here is that the justification is that we gotta use the same discount rate as the private sector, because otherwise we might risk distorting the resource allocations. We might end up in having resource misallocations, and this is what we do not want.